In today's video, a ruthless undead warband battles an Elven special operations team as we test drive Second Thunder's open combat tabletop miniatures rules, suitable for pre-gunpowder historical and fantasy settings. Well, hi folks, this is Lee from SkirmishWargames.com. Welcome to the channel. Today, Lynn and I are going to test drive Open Combat, a fast-paced set of skirmish rules for fighting miniature battles, suitable for both pre-gunpowder historical and fantasy settings. This really nice rulebook here is published by a company called Second Thunder, which describes itself as an independent publisher of miniature wargame rules and other tabletop games. In a nutshell, this is a fast-paced, easy-to-learn D6-based system that allows you to play quick skirmish games in virtually any pre-gunpowder time period or genre using whatever historical or fantasy miniatures you have in your collection. Open Combat is designed with 28mm figures in mind, but you can easily scale it up or down depending on your preference. In the rulebook's preface, author Carl Brown writes that he has a long-time habit of buying select miniatures or units here and there from various companies, not necessarily with the intent of army building, but just because he likes the figures. He says he wanted to design a rule system that would let him use the various small squads and individual models he's accumulated. He also wanted a game that could be played in a short amount of time on a relatively small gaming area, and that would deliver the same jolt as reading a good action scene in a novel or watching a well-choreographed fight sequence on TV. There's even a supplement called Open Combat Swordmasters, and this is for creating exciting adventures of flashing blades, razor-edged wit, and dazzling swordplay. So if you're a fan of the Three Musketeers, at least the swordplay part of it, this might be kind of interesting for you. But today, however, we're going to be test driving the Open Combat core rules, and we're going to be playing a game on a 22x30 battle mat here. This is kind of a standard kill team size mat. The rulebook says that Open Combat was designed with a 24x24 battlefield in mind, but of course you can scale that up if you have a 3x3 or a 4x4 mat you want to use. You just need to tweak the missile range rules and a couple other things, but the rulebook gives you guidelines on how to do that. So over the course of today's game, we will try our best to kind of go over the Open Combat rules as we understand them. Just please keep in mind that this is a relatively new game for us, so we may have an imperfect interpretation of some of the rules, but hopefully at the very least you'll get a flavor for what Open Combat is all about. Fortunately for us, a lot of the standard boilerplate rules regarding things like movement and line of sight and cover are pretty similar to things we've seen in other tabletop skirmish games. Where Open Combat really comes into its own, though, is in Warband and unit creation. So using just a pretty simple stat line here, speed, attack, defense, fortitude, and mind, as well as some weapon characteristics, and sort of a short list of special abilities, you can create almost any unit you want. So what's great about this is whatever you have on your shelf, let's say you have a squad of Roman centurions, or some Arthurian knights, or orc raiders, or an ogre and a wizard, you can create stats for all of those using this system. It's all very streamlined, but at the same time remarkably versatile. So let me show you the troops we're going to be using in today's game, and I'll kind of explain their stat lines and their abilities, and you can see how we created our forces using the Open Combat system. Okay, so for today's video, Lynn is going to be fielding basically an Elf Special Operatives team. This is an Elf Strike Force from the Elf Forest, and you may recognize some of these miniatures from the Discount Rune Wars miniatures video we did a few months back. Actually, I think this is a human, but she must have been adopted into the elf clan. And so for the purposes of today's game, she is an elf assassin in training. But this team is led by Argax Earthshadow. He's the leader. And let me give you his stat line to give you a sense for how this all works. So as a leader, he has a higher stat line than some of the other ones. His speed is 5, his attack is 6, defense is 5, fortitude is 6, and mind is 4. Speed determines how far he can move. Attack is his attack value. Defense is his defense value. Fortitude is like physical stamina. It also kind of counts as hit points. And then mind, willpower, mental acumen, things like that. But if you run out of mind, like the necromancer they're going to be facing today has powers where he can erode people's sanity, basically take away their mind points. Once your mind is gone, then your attack and defense values are cut in half. So you can still operate with 0 mind, but you're not very good at doing anything. There's also an opportunity over the course of the game to take a rest, to use 2 actions to take a rest, and you can recover 1 mind or 1 fortitude, which kind of means you're catching your breath, binding your wounds. So naturally the leader is going to have higher stats in most cases than some of the other units. Of course, a wizard, here the battle wizard, might have a higher mind. A robust warrior might have a higher attack value or more fortitude. The assassin might be nimble and faster. So you just adjust those numbers to sort of represent the type of unit you want to have. So if you had a knight with a lot of armor, you might give them a very high defense value, but they might move more slowly. Of course, you could give a unit high stats on everything, but you got to pay for all those points. The other thing you also pay for is things like weapons. You pay for each weapon, you pay for each special ability. So for example, the leader here, he has some special abilities. Resolute, which means it's harder for him to get pushed back. He can be inspiring, which gives a buff basically to one of his troops nearby. He can do focused blow, which gives him a bonus on attacking. This guy here on the end with the 7-foot two-handed sword, that's a pretty interesting weapon, and we'll explain how that works in the game. But basically it's this wild swinging blade that does a lot of damage, but also can throw you off balance and have a lot of negatives as well. So basically he has a very decent fighter stat line. He has his two-handed sword, and also he has a special ability called Furious Assault, which is a 2-action attack, which can do a lot of damage. The Battle Wizard, there is no magic section in this game. So what they do is you use some of the special abilities to sort of mimic magical effects. So she has the equivalent of a sling, a bow, and a crossbow, and those all represent, magic missile, thunderbolt, fireball. And so a sling, you can do a couple of shots at close range. A bow is kind of a standard shot, and a crossbow is a 2-action shot that does a lot more damage. So that represents her spells. So it's a very simple spell system. And of course, here is the ubiquitous elf archer. His name is Fen. He has kind of standard archer type stats. We also gave him a bow. He's got aim and marksmanship, which helps him out with his bow. The apprentice assassin here, Thistle, is not as robust as some of her fighter compatriots, but she's very fast. She has 2 weapons. We gave her nimble, evade, and ambidextrous, which would be kind of appropriate for an assassin type. So not as beefy as some of the other elves, but quick and knifey. So the elf strike force has been dispatched to deal with an undead menace, namely Todor Glava, the necromancer, and his squad of reanimates. And you may notice that there are actually 6 members of the undead team versus 5 members of the elf team. And that's because these are both 122-point teams. So if you add up all their characteristics and their weapon values and special abilities and things like that, they both come to 122 points. But the undead warriors are a little cheaper on average, so there's more of them. For example, these Revenant Archers here on the ends, these Undead Archers, are pretty wimpy. They have an attack value of 3, a defense of only 2 because they're just wearing moldy rags, and they don't have any additional hand weapon like the soldiers do. So if they get attacked in hand-to-hand combat, they're just going to have to fight back with their bony fists. So they're pretty cheap. These soldier Revenants, these guys here, have a little bit more armor. They have a shield. They also have a hand weapon, which means if they roll certain dice scores during combat, they can score additional hits. But they're pretty boilerplate. They're pretty standard soldiers. So they're a little beefier than the archers, but still generally not as beefy as a typical elf warrior. The necromancer, on the other hand, is the strongest unit on the team. So he is not much of a fighter. He does have a staff and an attack value of 2. His defense value is only 3, but where he really comes into play is he's got a fortitude of 5 and a mind of 6. So he's got a lot of mental acumen. And so he's going to attempt to use his mental powers over the course of the game. So he has special abilities like Enrage, Intimidate, Distract, and he's going to try to erode the sanity of the elves that he's fighting and try to whittle their mind down to 0 so they have 1/2 attack and 1/2 defense, which should allow the Revenant soldiers to chop them to pieces. So we'll see how that strategy works out. And as I mentioned earlier, both of these teams, the undead team here and the elf team we saw earlier, are both evenly matched at 122 points. So on paper, at least, they should be balanced. But there are more undead, so we'll have to see if the quality of the elf strike force is able to match up against the quantity of the undead horde. So with that in mind, let's start the game and find out. Okay, well, let's get to it then and test drive some of these rules here. So open combat, the rulebook says, was sort of designed with a 24 by 24 battlefield in mind, and we're using a standard 30 by 22 kill team type mat. So this is a little bit narrower, but roughly the same amount of square footage. And as you can see, we've decked out the battlefield with some cemetery and mausoleum terrain. This is actually some of the WizKids stuff that we unboxed in a previous video. I think this is the WizKids City of the Dead Statues and Monuments set and the Cemetery of the Fallen set. So sort of a hodgepodge of some of those pieces. And so our scenario today is going to be the legendary necromancer Todor Glava has reanimated some revenants, some soldiers, and some Revenant Archers, and he's trying to take control of this old mausoleum in an abandoned cemetery, sort of between the elf forest and the human village. And we don't know why he really wants it. Maybe there's a vampire he's trying to resurrect, or some ancient relic, but the elves have gotten wind of it, and they can't really depend on the human villagers to do what's right. So they've dispatched a strike team. That's these guys here. These are these Rune Wars elves. And I will say, Lynn, that your elves are pretty tall and athletic, so they must have been eating a lot of venison out there in the forest. A little taller than the standard Tolkien elves that we're sort of used to, but they're all about 6'5". This guy here is like a 7-foot sword. So anyway, so they're the elf strike team, and they've been dispatched to the cemetery to try to stop Todor Glava and his band of revenants from taking over the mausoleum. And who knows what's in there buried underneath. Probably something bad, but they don't want a vampire running loose in the forest, so that's why they've kind of stepped in to do what's right. So we've set up our forces in advance. I've set up the forces of the necromancer and his reanimates over on this side, and you have the elf strike force on the other side near the fence. And I guess we'll roll for initiative, and then we'll kind of explain the rules sort of step by step as we go through. And it's some pretty simple rule system once you get the hang of it. Some things are very similar. You're going to recognize them from some other games, but some things are sort of unique too. We've already done a practice game, so I think we got a handle on it. But as always, when we're trying out a new rule set, or any rule set for that matter, we will do our best to give you a flavor of the game, but take it with a grain of salt because maybe there's a few things here that are a little bit off. Okay, Lynn, any big strategy for...
Don't get knocked off the board.
Don't get knocked off the board. Yeah, in our practice game, your leader was almost shot off the board with an arrow. He got hit, and it was a knockback, and if he went off the board, then he would have been gone, out of play. So yeah, that would have been kind of a coup. It didn't ultimately happen, but... Oh, and I will say we're counting this patch of strangler vines here as hazardous terrain. I think we all have enough good sense to sort of avoid them, but it would be hazardous terrain if we walk through them. And everything else we'll just kind of explain as we're going along. So let's roll for some initiative. I'm using the red dice because the necromancers are in their nice red cloaks, and you have green for the elves. I have a 6.
I have a 3.
All right, I'm going to take initiative. So when a player has initiative, he or she can activate all their units one at a time, assuming that nothing bad happens to sort of interrupt that process. And if it does, then initiative switches to the other player. But assuming that that doesn't happen, then each player can activate his or her units one at a time, and each unit, when it's activated, can take 2 actions. And actions can be things like move, attack, interact with something like a door. They can take 2 actions and rest and recover a point of fortitude or mind. They can stand up using 2 actions if they've been knocked prone. Or, let's see, I think that's about it. Move, attack, interact, rest, stand up, and that's pretty much it. And as I mentioned earlier, each of these units has several stats in their stat line, and that includes things like fortitude, which is basically their health, and mind, which is kind of their mental health, their fighting spirit, their mental aptitude, things like that. And over the course of the battle, fortitude can get worn down, and mind can also get worn down. And if their mind stat goes to 0 for whatever reason, they're pretty much at half attack and defense, and not that useful. Now, all the units on a particular team, you add up all of their mind and all their fortitude and divide by 2, and that gives the break point for the whole team, for the whole squad. And so if at some point from damage they've taken, fortitude, mind, or people being knocked off the board, they hit that break point, then the squad is basically, they're demoralized and they run off the board and the game is over. So you might have some units like the leader and the battle wizard here who have a lot of fortitude and a lot of mind, and if they happen to be knocked off the board, then that takes a big chunk out of your breakpoint total. So you want to use your powerful troops, but at the same time, if they get knocked out, then you've gone a long way to hitting the breakpoint of your squad. So you got to watch that a little bit. That's just some of the basics, some of the things to keep an eye on, and we'll kind of explain the rest as we go. Okay, so I have initiative for the first turn, and I'm going to go ahead and move my guys. My Revenants, my Reanimates, the soldier here and the archer here, they only move 3. So if they use both of their actions for a movement, then they can move a total of 6. My Necromancer moves 4, so he can move a total of 8. One interesting thing about this game is because the mat is kind of small. It's designed to be played on a 24 by 24 mat, even though this is 30 by 22. Some missile weapons like crossbows and regular bows, and I think the Battle Wizard, when she's using crossbow and bow equivalent spells, can travel the whole length of the board, so there's really no measuring of range. Some other weapons like thrown daggers and slings and javelins and things like that have a shorter range, so if those come into play, we do have to measure range. But for some of the main missile weapons, you can just shoot anywhere, so there's no really measuring for range, no short range, no medium range, no long range. So that means that once somebody's in line of sight, they're fair game for an archer or a crossbowman. Okay, so we're just going to rocket through this because skeletons have no self-preservation. So this Revenant soldier is going to run up here. As we said earlier, he's pretty well armored up, and he's got a shield, which is kind of helpful, and not a bad attack value, so he's pretty sturdy. The archer, on the other hand, I'm going to do 2 actions and move him a full 6. Is pretty wimpy. He has a bow, but he has no hand weapon, and so if he gets caught in close combat, he just has to claw with his bony fingers.
In this game, it's not any different than the bow for attack value.
So that's correct. His attack value stays the same whether he's shooting with a bow or, fighting with his bony fists. But I think it's harder to do damage with the fists. He has to do a solid hit to cause a loss of fortitude. So otherwise, he's just kind of flailing wildly. And then the Necromancer is going to go roughly 8 that way. You also have to keep facing in mind. So you sort of want to have your guy pivoted to the direction that you want him when he ends his movement. And attacks from behind can be pretty bad. I think you get double attack value if you're attacking someone from behind. And also facing will determine where your line of sight is and things like that. So I might just pivot him. You can pivot your guys as they're moving at will to have them facing the way you want them. But then once they're there, that's where they are. So unless he takes another movement action in another turn and moves his facing, or if something happens where you're attacking him and he has line of sight and you're trying to get behind him, then in your turn he can actually pivot around. But we'll explain how that works if it comes up. But for now, he's right there. And then over here behind the scary tree, we have a bunch of Revenant soldiers. Okay. So that is the Undead team, the Necromancer and his Revenants, and as you can see, they're not really big on self-preservation, so they're just screaming toward the middle of the board and going to meet these elves head-on when the time comes. Are you unnerved by this wall of undead bones running your way?
Not yet.
Not yet.
We'll see when they get closer. So Titania, the battle mage, has a movement of 4.
Okay.
So for her first action, she's going to move along that fence line to that open gap and see if she can get a clear shot. So for her second action, she's going to shoot a fireball at that closest Revenant.
So Titania, the battle mage, is going to unleash a combat spell on that Revenant soldier. The way the battle mage works is there is no dedicated magic section to this game, but you can have a battle mage. And so what they do is they just assign them abilities or weapons that would approximate a magic missile or a fireball or a lightning bolt or whatever. So you are going to shoot what?
A fireball.
Which would be the equivalent of a
what?
Bow. Of a bow. You could also do a crossbow, but you would need
it takes
2 actions. And you could do a sling, which just takes 1, but is short range and doesn't do as much. So this is going to be a middle strength attack, the equivalent of a bow, and so the battle mage is going to shoot that Revenant over there. So your battle mage has a standard attack value of 5 for everything, pretty much. And my Revenant has a defense of 4. So if your attack was equal to his defense or less, then you would roll 1 die. If it's more than his defense, but up to 2 times his defense, 2 dice. And if it's more than 2 times, then 3 dice. So you get to roll 2 dice for your attack. And in the case of a bow, you get to pick one of them. So that's 2 4s. So if you'd have rolled a 1, that'd be a terrible miss. If you'd have rolled a 2, that would be a miss. A 3 or a 4 is a force back. A 5 is a minor hit, and a 6 is a solid hit. So some weapons do multiple hits. A bow is not one of them. So you rolled your 2 dice, you picked the best one, which was a force back. Unfortunately, the skeleton has Resolute as one of his abilities. I think your leader has that too. So he can't be forced back on anything except a solid hit. Now, in this case, you fired your fireball. You would have forced him back, but...
it just went through his bones.
It just went through the bones, or he's slightly on fire, but he doesn't really care. So, okay, so that is the first attack from the Battle Wizard. Okay, who's your next activation?
Next up is Fen, my archer, with a movement of 5.
So he also has Marksman too, right, as one of his abilities?
Yes, so he can't get a terrible miss.
Which is nice, because if you do a terrible miss, you would lose your initiative, and it would swap over to me.
I would not like that at all. So Fen has an attack of 4, and your Revenant has a defense of 4.
Right, so you roll 1 die for shooting your arrow. And a 1, so that would normally be a terrible miss, but because he has Marksman, he doesn't terrible miss.
He just misses.
So we each have a leader. Mine is the Necromancer, Tordor Glava, and yours is the elf leader, Argax Earthshadow, right? And if the leaders are alive and not prone, then they can use their leadership ability, which means 3 rerolls over the course of the game. So as long as the leader is alive and not prone, if you have a roll from any of your troops that you want to reroll, you have to roll all the dice involved with that, whatever it was, and then accept that second roll. But you do that up to 3 times as long as your leader is still on the board and standing up. So had your elf not had Marksman and had you lost initiative, you could have re-rolled that to avoid losing initiative.
Mm-hmm.
So, anywho. All right, who's next?
Next up is my leader, Argax Earthshadow, and he has a movement of 5.
And he has, he's Resolute and has like Precision Strike or something like that too, right?
He has Resolute, Inspire, and Focused Blow.
So he's racing forward to hide behind the mausoleum. This game has a rule where if most of your guys, sort of the center of your unit, is behind cover, and you just see like an arm or something sticking out, they assume that he's smart enough to pull it back into cover. So did he move twice or just once?
He just moved once, but he's going to stay put because there's cover here behind the mausoleum. Next up is Thistle, my apprentice assassin, who has a movement of 6.
Thistle is actually a human miniature from the Rune Wars starter set, I think, but she got swept in with your elf painting frenzy, and so now she's an elf. So she's got a lot of abilities. She's got Nimble, which means she can just kind of vault over obstacles. Evade, right? So she can leave combat at will. And she's ambidextrous, so she's got a sword and a dagger. Okay.
And last but not least, I'm going to move my Warden.
Okay, Warden with the Great Blade. That's the guy rocking the 7-foot two-handed sword.
And he's got a movement of 5.
Now, you're going to run into a problem here in that you can't move through your own troops.
But I can move around this one.
You can move around that one. Getting pretty close to the edge there.
That doesn't mean I have to stay there.
No, it does not.
So there's 3 in
Though
there.
if I was able to shoot you off the edge, I'd be really pleased with that.
Oh, yeah, I know you would.
Wow, that's gutsy.
Hey, I get another 5, though.
Oh, okay. So he's charging forward. That great sword is sort of deadly if you can engage multiple opponents at the same time, because any hits that you score on everybody that you're engaged with. But it's also unwieldy, so when you roll your dice, you have to take everything in the die roll. So every hit and every disastrous result all get tabulated at the same time, because basically you're just swinging this thing around, this 70-pound two-handed sword, like a crazy man.
That's the last of my guys. Now it's your turn.
So the elves are kind of moving in, but they're taking a cautious approach, sort of hiding behind, some of them anyway, hiding behind the mausoleum there. Okay, now it's my turn again, and I have to be a little bit careful because my skeletons are not terribly proficient archers, and if they take a shot and it's a horrible miss, and I'd get a reroll, for my leader, but I don't want to burn those unnecessarily. But if I was to get a horrible miss, then I would lose my initiative. So I may save the archers toward the end of my turn and move some the other guys first. I think the Necromancer is going to move his 4. So I'm thinking he can pretty much see your assassin there.
Mm-hmm.
And he's within range to use one of his powers, the power of his mind, to try to drive her to insanity. He's not much of a fighter, but he does have some mental powers, so he's going to use Intimidate against your assassin there. That pits the power of his mind versus the power of her mind. And so he has a mind of 5. What is your mind?
3.
So he gets to roll 2 dice and see if he can do some mental damage. 6.
I think she loses 2 mind.
Yeah, 6 is a solid hit. So she loses 2 mind. What does that take her down to?
Looks like Thistle is down to 1 mind.
So if he can reduce her mind to 0 at some point, then she'll be mentally exhausted, and that makes her have half attack and half defense. She'll be shell-shocked. Okay, so that is the Necromancer using the power of his mind. So next I'm going to have this Revenant soldier here, and he's going to move both of his moves, try to close in with that archer. He can't quite get all the way in there, but he'll be there. This Revenant soldier here is going to kind of move up towards your Warden with the Great Blade. This Revenant soldier here is going to also move up, try to provide some support here. So 2 actions, each action he can move 3 inches, so he's moving a full 6. Now I can move my archers. So that guy's going to move about to there and take a shot at your Warden with the Great Blade. I'm going to assume that the pile of strangler vines doesn't count as cover unless you think otherwise. So his defense is 3, the skeleton's attack is 3, so 1 die, arrow shot, a 4, which would be a knockback. Force back 1 inch. So that forces him back 1 inch directly away from the shot, and had he backed into that fence and not been able to move his full 1 inch back, then he would have taken a fortitude damage. I've been reminded to put a marker by my guys who moved. And then I have this archer here. Now, if he didn't move at all, he could take 2 shots, but I think I'm going to move him and take a shot at the Warden again. So the second archer is going to take a shot at the Warden as well. So same thing, 3 attack versus 3 defense. And a 5, which is a minor hit. So that's 1 fortitude damage off the Warden. And how many fortitude does he have?
He started with 3, now he's down to 2.
So Lynn, it's your turn, and you had a question about circling around behind. If you're in line of sight or they're front facing, and you circle around behind them, they can pivot to meet you.
Unless they're in combat already.
Unless they're in combat. If they're engaged, they can't do that. Or if for some reason you were technically in front of them, but some terrain was blocking the view so they couldn't see you, then you can sneak around behind them.
Next, I'm going to activate Titania.
Oh, the Battle Wizard's making a move.
So Titania is going to move forward to the opening in the fence and take a shot at your Necromancer.
Oh, okay. So she's staying behind the fence, but she's going to take a shot at Todor Glava, and I assume that's just with a regular bow equivalent.
The fireball, yeah.
The fireball.
So her attack is 5.
His defense is 3, so you're not quite double. So you get 2 dice. Pick 1.
A 2 and a 1? I think I'll take the 2.
You could re-roll that.
Yeah, I may as well re-roll.
If it's important to you.
It is.
A 4 and a 4, so that's a force back. So you knock him back 1 inch. So he's knocked back 1 inch from the explosion of the fireball. So that's your first movement.
Yes, and now I'm going to move my apprentice assassin.
Ideally, you'd like to get your assassin. Oh. So you're moving your assassin, and you're kind of moving her over here, and you don't want to have the assassin have a rear facing toward that skeleton. Okay.
No, I do not.
Okay.
So going 6 here.
So Thistle is moving around the skeleton Revenant, and because you're in line of sight as you're moving in, he can pivot. But his bow is not that effective now because you're in close combat, so he just has to claw with bony fingers.
Next up is my leader Argax. He has a movement of 5.
That's your leader, moving 5. Okay, it looks like Argax is using his second action to move again and engage with the skeleton. So in some games, when you have 2 or more allies attacking the same enemy, then each of those allies will get some sort of a combat bonus. Not so in this game. However, because Thistle had already engaged with the skeleton from the front, then by the time Argax showed up, he's able to kind of come in from the blind spot, and he'll get a rear attack bonus next turn when he makes his attack. The only one left you have to move is, you have an archer and a warden over there, right? So the warden and this archer still have to go. So the archer is actually backing up because he doesn't want to fight that Revenant soldier.
Yeah.
Okay, so this archer here on the end is going to back up and then shoot that Revenant.
So 4 attack versus 4 defense, so 1.
1 die, 5 is a minor hit.
Which is deflected by the shield.
Which is deflected by the shield. So your Elven archer shot the Revenant soldier. You rolled a 5, which is a minor hit. But because the skeleton had a shield and you were shooting toward the front facing, that minor hit is actually deflected. Okay, the last guy to activate on your team is the elf with the greatsword.
My warden is going to rest this turn so that he can gain back a point of fortitude.
So Warden is going to take 2 actions and rest and tend his wounds. Okay, well now it's the Revenant's turn again, and I think the Necromancer wants to make another psychological attack. Okay, so psychological attacks may be used while engaged, may target any model within range, friend or foe, and line of sight. So Thistle, the elf assassin, is currently in close combat with a skeletal archer, which means the other Revenant archer can't shoot her with an arrow. However, the Necromancer can still target her with a psychological attack. So the Necromancer is going to move forward his 4 and then use the power of his mind to intimidate Thistle. All right, so he's using a mental attack. If he was shooting a bow, he couldn't shoot into melee, but a mental attack you can do against any target within range, friend or foe. So he's going to use Intimidate, and her mind is only 1 now, and his mind, I think I said 5 before, but it's actually 6 because he's the Necromancer. And so he gets to roll 3 dice. And I'm going to take a reroll because I don't like this roll. I'm going to use one of my 3 rerolls. And 4. So I have to take this. So that's a 4. So that is nothing. So he was really trying to drive her to the point of insanity, but was not that successful. This Revenant soldier is going to take 2 move actions, which means he can move forward a total of 6. This Revenant soldier is also going to take 2 move actions, which allows him to sneak up behind your leader, Argax, but doesn't leave him any actions to attack with yet. The third Revenant soldier had been pursuing your archer, but he's going to reevaluate that strategy, do an about face, and take 2 movement actions in the opposite direction. And who do I have left? I have an archer and an archer. 2 archers left. So the first skeleton archer is actually in melee right now, so he can't fire his bow. So he's going to take 2 actions, make 2 attacks, and swing his bony fists wildly in the direction of the assassin. His attack is 3, your defense is 2, so he gets to roll 2 dice. 2 is an impasse, so his second attack. So that is a solid hit with that 6. So the Revenant Archer scores a solid hit, and normally that would mean a loss of fortitude and a force back, but in this case, because the skeleton is just fighting with fists, the Elf Assassin just loses a fortitude. And the last archer is going to take a shot at your Warden. Actually 2 shots, because he's not moving. So his attack is 3. What's your defense?
The Warden has a defense of 3.
So 1 die. So the first shot is a 5. That's a minor hit. So that's a fortitude. And the second shot is a 1, which would be a catastrophic miss, which means that initiative switches over to the Elves. So it's fortunate that I've already moved all of my skeletons. So for your turn, you're going to activate Fen the Archer first, right?
Yes. Fen is going to move forward for his first action, and for his second action, he's going to shoot your Revenant soldier.
He's going to shoot here. We're going to give him the benefit of the doubt and say that's from the rear. So he's shooting the Revenant in the back with an arrow. Cowardly elf. And so his defense is 1/2. So you get 2 dice.
I rolled 2 4s. I only get to use 1. That's a force back.
So he does have a shield, but that doesn't work because he's not facing the right way. And he's resolute, but also he's not facing the right way. So he is getting forced back 1 inch this way.
Now I can shoot over the fence, right?
Oh, the low fence?
Yeah.
Yeah, I'd say you could shoot over the low fence. Maybe not the high fence or the columns.
Okay, so Titania is going to shift down to the low part of the fence and take a shot at your Revenant soldier.
All right, Revenant soldier from the front.
She's using a fireball, which is equivalent to a bow. Her attack is 5, your defense is 4, so I get 2 dice.
6. Solid hit. Yeah, he has resolute, so you can only force him back with a solid hit, which you did. So he loses the fortitude, goes back 1 inch. So that is not to there.
So for my next action, I'm going to use Argax. He's going to attack your skeleton from the rear. And I'm going to use both actions, so 2 attacks. His attack is 6.
The archer only has a defense of 2.
Oh, so I get 3 dice.
He doesn't have any armor and he doesn't have a shield, so. 6 and a 5. Now you're using a hand weapon, so you do get a chance to do multiple hits. So because he's using a hand weapon and a hand weapon can do multiple hits, you did 1 solid hit with a knockback and then a minor hit. So that's 2 fortitude total, and you knock him back 1 inch, but you can follow up and follow him. Okay, we had a little rules question we had to kind of sort out, but basically the gist of it is if 2 models are engaged and one voluntarily disengages, then the model that it's disengaging from gets a free attack. Now, a knockback, a force back, is not the same as that, and a follow-up, following somebody who's forced back is not the same as that. So that would not kick in. There would be no free attacks from the force back or the follow-up. So the skeleton is knocked back, the leader follows up, nobody gets a disengage attack, and that's where we're at. So this Revenant Archer here is down to 1 fortitude. So the leader is going to attack again.
Yep.
And yeah, 2 6s, so that'd be 2 solid hits. So that takes this Revenant out of play. So this Revenant here had a fortitude of 3 and a mind of 2. So that takes 5 points off of my total, my breakpoint total of 19. So I'm down to 14. Plus I have another wounded soldier. So really my breakpoint is at about 13 right now, unless some people start resting to kind of bring it up a bit. But that is where we're at. So 1 Revenant Archer down. Okay. Your assassin, is she going to do something funny?
Yes, she's going to run up and stab your Necromancer. She has a movement of 6, so she can actually run all the way around your Necromancer and still have an action for stabby.
Okay, if you do that, then he can turn and face you.
That's fine. I just didn't want to be positioned where he could force me back into the mausoleum.
Oh, yeah, it makes sense. You don't want to be forced into the mausoleum?
No,
to
I
feed
do
the
not.
vampire?
I do not want to be forced into the mausoleum. Thistle's attack is 4. What's your defense?
Todor has a defense of 3, so 2 dice.
And it's a hand-to-hand weapon, so I can use both dice.
If you score hits on both dice, yeah, you can take advantage of both hits. 5 and 4, so 1 minor hit. So that's 1 point. Brings him down to a fortitude of 4. Okay, and then Warden is your last guy, and he's just going to rest and regain a fortitude.
Yes, because you keep shooting him.
All right, so I guess the Revenants need to take revenge for the skeletal archer that you dispatched. We're going to start with the Necromancer, and he is going to use the power of his mind to try to finish driving Thistle to the brink of insanity.
Yes, that's just what you want, an insane knife-wielding assassin.
So his mind is 6, your mind is 1, so he gets to roll 3 dice. So that is a solid hit, so that is 2 mind, so she's at 0 mind. And then he's going to attack with his staff, which is the equivalent of a spear. So it doesn't get multiple hits. Okay, so you're at 1/2 attack and defense, so your defense is 1. His attack is only 2, but that's still twice as much. So he's going to attack with his staff. A 4, so that's a force back, so she gets forced back 1 inch.
See, I didn't get forced into the mausoleum. Are you going to follow up?
He won't follow up because this archer is going to shoot at her twice.
Terrible miss.
So Thistle normally has a defense of 2, but because her mind is 0, her defense is now 1. The Revenant Archer has an attack of 3, so he gets to roll 3 dice, but fortunately for you, a bow can't score multiple hits, so he'll just choose the best die roll out of the batch. 6. So
Did I get forced back again?
a solid hit. And you take a fortitude. What's your fortitude at right now?
1.
So the Revenant Archer is going to fire again. Maybe he'll get a lucky shot and polish her off. It's not a very good roll. So I'm going to use one of my leadership rerolls. Force back. Oh, you dodged a bullet there.
No damage.
So Thistle has had her mind score reduced to 0. She's been driven back under a hail of arrows, but she still has 1 fortitude left. So this Revenant soldier is going to use both of his move actions to get into base to base, but he can't attack yet. This Revenant is going to close in and attack your leader from the back.
Coward.
So his attack is normally 4, so now it's 8 because he's attacking from behind. And what is your defense?
5.
5. So not quite double, but he still gets 2 dice. Since the Revenant soldier is attacking with a hand weapon, he can score multiple hits. So any 5s or 6s he gets to keep. Yeah, had I scored a higher number there, that would have been an additional hit. But as it is, I got 1 solid hit. So that is 1 fortitude plus a force back.
Okay, moving forward an inch. Are you going to follow up?
Yeah.
But I can turn around when it's my turn, right?
You can, but that'll be, you'll get a free attack as you turn around.
Or I can disengage.
Or disengage. You could disengage and attack the Necromancer from behind.
Uh-huh.
And just take an axe blow to the back of the head while you're doing it.
Ouch!
So that is this Revenant. He gets a gold star. He did well.
So I took 1 damage, right?
Yeah. All your guys are over here kind of just, you're letting the leader get chopped to pieces.
Yep, I don't care about my leader.
Don't care about your leader?
He said he wanted all the glory.
And then this last Revenant soldier is going to take 2 movement actions, and that should get him within base-to-base contact of the elf leader, and then hopefully he can attack next turn. So yeah, this is an unfortunate situation in that you have your back facing 2 enemies. To turn around is basically movement. So they're going to both get a free action if you try to turn around, or you could disengage and they'll both get a free attack as well.
So either way, they'll both get a free attack.
Looks like it, yeah.
Okay.
All right, I think that's all the undead units, so now initiative goes back over to the elves.
So I'm going to take my Warden and use my 10 to go right up here.
Okay, so he's attacking the Revenant from the rear.
Yep.
So he used all of his movement. Okay. Then you have a Battle Wizard and an Archer.
So my Battle Wizard has a movement of 4, so if I use both my actions, I can move a total of 8. Next, I'm going to use Fen, my Archer. He's going to move up 3 for his first action, and for his second action, I'm going to shoot your Necromancer in the back.
Yeah, he's kind of threading the needle there, but there's a clear line of sight, so why not?
So Necromancer in the back. So half defense.
Okay, his defense is normally 3, so you round up fractions, so this is a defense of 2. What's your attack?
His attack is 4, so I get 2 dice.
2 4s.
Force back.
So the Necromancer is struck in the back with an arrow which does no damage, but sends him stumbling forward an inch. Okay, so your leader here, Argax.
He could turn around and face your Revenant, but they'd get a free shot anyway, so he may as well disengage and hit your Necromancer in the back.
So the Necromancer normally has a defense of 3, but since you're attacking from behind, it's only 2. What's your attack?
6.
6. So 3 dice. And you can score multiple hits. 6, 3, and 2. So that's a solid hit, so you do 1 fortitude and you knock him back. So that cowardly blow to the back of the head brings the Necromancer's fortitude down to 3.
Argax is going to follow up.
So yeah, we did forget one thing here. When Argax disengaged from those 2 skeletons, they should have gotten an attack while he was disengaging, so they'll take those now. So because he's disengaging, that means his defense is 1/2 of what it normally is, so that's a 3 because it's normally a 5, and their attack is 4, so they each get 2 dice. So this first one here, nothing. Hey folks, let me interject here for just a second. Somewhere during the course of this game, Lynn and I got it in our heads that a 3 was an impasse or a miss. So that's how we played it, and of course it worked fine, but according to the letter of the rules, a 3 is actually a force back. So we'll keep that in mind for next time. And this other one? Oh, a solid hit. So that's 1 fortitude and a knockback, and then another minor hit. So 2 fortitude. Okay, had we done everything in the correct sequence, it would have looked something like this. You would have declared that Argax was disengaging from the Revenants. Then each Revenant soldier would get a free attack on Argax. In this case, the result of those free attacks was 2 fortitude worth of damage, and then Argax was forced back, or in this case, forced forward 1 inch. The Revenant that caused the force back doesn't get to follow up because this is a disengage, and then Argax gets to make his move.
Next, I'm going to activate Thistle. Thistle's in combat, so she can't rest and regain any of her mind, so she's just going to attack.
So yeah, Thistle can't rest because she's engaged, so her attack is 1/2 of what it normally is because her mind is 0.
So my attack is 2. What's your defense?
4.
So I get 1 die.
3 is nothing, and she can attack again. And 3, nothing.
I may as well reroll.
Okay. 3, nothing.
The dice just don't like me today.
So now I guess it's the Revenant's turn again.
Okay, what are you going to do?
I suppose Todor will move, so he'll pivot, so he's facing you. So you get a free attack.
So my attack is 6. What's your defense?
His defense is 3, so 2 dice. And nothing.
I will re-roll those.
How many more rerolls do you get?
That's the last one.
2. So, okay. Well, fortunately, it wasn't your turn.
Yeah.
So you didn't lose initiative from those 2 ones.
Right.
That was your free attack, so now Todor gets to take his second action. If the Necromancer is in base to base, he can use Distract, which would make you lose some activations in your next turn. So if he's successful. His mind is 6. What is your mind?
It's 4.
4. So 2 dice. 4. I don't think that's anything.
For a psychological attack, you need at least 5.
He tried to distract you, but he didn't distract you. Wasn't successful. So that's poor Todor.
Poor Todor.
Poor Todor. This skeleton here is going to attack. This Revenant is going to attack your assassin. His attack is 4. What's your defense?
1.
1. So he gets 3 dice. 6. Solid hit. So she only had 1 fortitude left, so that's the end of Thistle, right?
That's the end of Thistle.
What was Thistle's fortitude in mind to begin with?
3 and 3. So that's 6 from Thistle. I also have 3 damage on other characters, so that's a total of 9 off my breakpoint of 18.
All right, so that's the skeleton there. Next, I'm going to move this other sword-bearing skeleton because he's currently unengaged. He's going to move up behind your leader, but he can't quite attack yet. This Revenant soldier with the axe is going to pivot around and face your Warden with the greatsword, which means you get a free attack. His defense is 4.
And my attack is 5, so I get 2 dice.
So that is a solid hit with a knockback. Knock him back about an inch. Do 1 point of fortitude. Okay, so you're choosing not to follow up.
I'm choosing not to follow up because I don't want to get whacked with your axe.
All right. Okay, so unfortunately your free attack forced the Revenant back, so he's going to have to use his second action to re-engage, and he won't get to attack this turn. So that is all of these guys. This archer is going to move 3 this way and initiate an archer duel with Fen, your archer over there. So he's going to shoot at Fen. His attack is 3. What's your defense?
3.
3, so 1 die. 6, solid hit and a knockback. So Fen, the Elvish archer, is struck by an arrow. He's forced back 1 inch and loses 1 fortitude. How many fortitude points does he have left?
2.
So that was a pretty decent turn for the Revenants, but now the Elves are up again.
Okay, my leader is going to attack your leader. So my attack is 6. What's your defense?
So Argax's attack is 6. The Necromancer's defense is 3, so that's twice as many. So you get to attack with 2 dice. If he had just 1 more point of attack, you'd get 3 dice.
Right, but he doesn't. A 4 and a 2, so that's a force back.
That looks like that's a full inch.
And I'm going to follow up, and I'm going to attack again. You only get forced back, right? I didn't do any damage.
3 and 2, which is nothing. Okay, so Argak's Earth Shadow has successfully driven back the Necromancer, but he's also all alone and surrounded by Revenants, so we'll see how that plays out. On your side, you got an Archer, you got a Battle Mage, you got your Warden with the Great Sword.
So my Battle Mage has a movement of 5, and the Revenant Soldier with his sword held high is going to get shot in the back.
All right, so she's threading the needle with a fireball to shoot the Revenant. Shot and refacing half defense. So his defense is only 2 now.
And her attack is 5.
You get 3 dice. The 6 is a solid hit and a force back. That is the Revenant with the sword. So the fireball does 1 fortitude point to the Revenant, drives him forward an inch, and he almost crashes into Argax, but he's still about a 1/4 inch away.
Okay, now I'm going to activate Fend my Archer. I'm going to shoot your Archer, and my attack is 4.
That guy is getting an arrow shot at him. His defense is 2. You get 2 dice.
Force back.
Force back. So the first bow shot knocks him back an inch.
And once more.
Second shot does a 5. That's a minor hit, so that's a loss of 1 fortitude. All right, is that all your guys?
I still have my Warden with the Greatsword.
So Warden with the Greatsword gets to make 2 attacks because he's right there in combat.
So my attack is 5. What's the defense on that Revenant Soldier?
The Revenant Soldier that Warden's fighting has a defense of 4.
So I get 2 dice.
Warden is using a 2-handed sword, so he has to take all of the dice results, good or bad.
So a 4 and a 3, that's a force back. I'll follow up and attack again.
And a 4 and a 3. Knocks him back about an inch.
This time I won't follow him.
Okay. All right. Is it all your dudes?
That's all my dudes.
Okay. Seems like you're forcing back the undead on all fronts, but now it's their turn. Let's see, what am I going to do here? I'm going to start with the Revenant that's behind your leader. And so he's going to attack twice. So because he's attacking from the rear, that means his attack is double, so it's a total of 8. And your defense is what?
5.
So 2 dice. 4, that's a force back. But since your elf leader can't move, he loses a fortitude. Now normally Resolute would protect you from that, but you're being attacked from the rear. If you were attacked from the front, you just hold your ground. Okay, and the second attack? 5, minor hit. So 1 fortitude. So that is the first Revenant Soldier. Next, this other Revenant Soldier is going to move up about 2.5 inches into the blind spot, and he's also going to attack Argax. So 1 attack, attack of 8 because it's from the rear, and your defense is 5. So 2 dice, and nothing. Is that what you needed?
Yeah, I only have 1 point left.
Oh, okay. So that's him. Todor is going to attack with his staff. His attack is only 2. And your defense is what, 5? So he's going to attack with his staff. I need a hit here. No. He's going to do it again. 4. Normally that's a force back, but Argax has Resolute. He's going to use a reroll. Oh, it's got to be in the box. No. I think that was my last reroll, but anyway, that was the Necromancer. And at one point he did score a 4, which is normally a force back, but because the elf leader has Resolute and he was being attacked from the front, he wasn't forced back. Otherwise, he couldn't back up because he had skeletons behind him and it would have taken his last fortitude. But because he had Resolute, he's still standing firm. So there you go. This guy, I suppose you'll charge in and engage your Warden. So attack of 4.
Defense of 3.
Defense of 3, 2 dice. 6, solid hit. Knock back. And does a point of fortitude.
Are you going to follow up?
No. How many fortitude does he have left?
2.
This archer is going to shoot at Warden. So his attack is 3.
His defense is 3.
Okay. 1 die. Knock back. Yeah, so normally you would have gotten knocked back, but you're going to run into your own guy, so you lose a fortitude. So now I get one more shot. That's a 3, so the second shot missed. Well, that was a pretty good round for the Revenants. They have the elf leader pretty much surrounded. He and the Warden are down to about 1 fortitude apiece. But it is their turn now, so the elves are going to get a turn, and maybe they can pull a rabbit out of the hat before they get overwhelmed by the undead mob.
Okay, I'm going to attack Todor,
All
since
right.
I'm going to be dead next turn.
So the leader is attacking Todor. You have 2 actions to attack with. Your attack value is 6, and the Necromancer's defense is 3.
I only get 2 dice. Nothing.
Nothing. All right. Okay, that's a really great roll for Argax there. So because he's using a hand weapon, he can score multiple hits. So that 6 is a solid hit. That means it does 1 fortitude plus a force back. And that 5 is a minor hit, so that also does a fortitude. So the Necromancer loses 1 fortitude because of the minor hit, and another fortitude because of the solid hit, which also forces him back. But because this stone sarcophagus is blocking his escape, he can't be forced back, and so he loses a 3rd fortitude, which is enough damage to destroy his physical body and remove him from the mortal plane. So Todor Glava, because he has a mind of 6 and a fortitude of 5, when he dies, that's 11 points toward the break point. This guy with the axe has 1 fortitude wound. This reloading archer has 1 fortitude wound. The, let's see, soldier with the sword high in the air there has 2 fortitude wounds. And I'm missing an archer who was killed earlier. And when you add all that up, that's 20 points. So my break point was 19. So with the death of the Necromancer, everybody crumbles to dust. And your leader breathes a sigh of relief.
With just 1 point of fortitude left, I didn't expect Argax to live through this turn, but a lucky die roll turned the tide. Now, if Argax had died in the last turn, it would have been the Elves that broke. So it was a really close game.
Well, that is the name of the game, and I'm glad it was kind of a dramatic, cinematic ending worthy of legend. So Argax Earthshadow can say that he was successful in defeating the undead menace, but it was close. And really, he's going to have some words with his warden here, who was kind of, and this one too, who was kind of just backing up and saying, we don't want to get arrows shot at us. Now the elves will have to decide if they want to go in there and see if there's a vampire or some ancient relic. Maybe it'll be like Lord of the Rings. It's like, destroy it, destroy the relic. No, I think I'll take it home. I know what to do with it. Well, folks, we hope you enjoyed our first test drive of the Open Combat Skirmish Wargaming system from Second Thunder. If you like the things we do here, please subscribe to our YouTube channel. Please give this video a big thumbs up. And of course, please visit us online at our website, skirmishwargames.com.